Welcome to Conversations Through Alzheimer's. I'm Amber Marty.
And I'm Felicia Wood. We're sisters and daughters of Rosemary Marty, diagnosed with Alzheimer's in June of 2025.
We're documenting her journey as it happens, and we're sharing every resource we find along the way.
This is her story.
And ours.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Today is a continuation as we talk about a lot of the early symptoms in our story with how did we realize that something was really going on with our mom? How did we kind of navigate the changes between, is this just old age? Is there something going on that's a different kind of neurological disorder or emotional disorder? We were really trying to kind of cut through the confusion. And so there was a bit of an inflection point. It was this one is going to be a deeper dive into a shorter period of time, because there was 1 week where my mom joined my sister for a trip to visit me in Plattsburgh. We'll go into the details here, but it turned into, in hindsight, what was kind of this tipping point and everyone kind of seeing very crystal clear that something was wrong and that she had a lot of dementia type symptoms. So we wanted to really slow down and go into what a lot of those things looked like, even reflecting back to some of the conversations that we were having. How did we kind of process through those things? And also be kind of open about how frustrating of an experience that was to kind of be in the thick of it without a diagnosis. So that is what we're going to cover today. Amber, is there anything you'd say else at the top here to kind of for listeners to prepare themselves for before we dive into the deeper part of this?
I don't think so. You're in for quite a story. That's all I'll say. Stories.
Exactly. Stories, many stories. Okay, so we'll bring this back in the timeline to end of March 2025. So this was about 3 months before her official diagnosis. All began with a trip that my husband and I were taking to Hawaii. Like we've shared, I have a young toddler, and so who else in the world would I trust with my baby other than my family? And truly the only person that I would trust is my sister, but she also works a full-time job and couldn't take the entire week off of work. So we kind of thought, okay, maybe if my mom comes as well and can kind of help Amber along this week, then they can together kind of tag team raising a toddler for a week, the grandchild, the nephew of the family, and that would allow Dave and I to get away. So we quickly kind of planned this maybe only a month before the trip started. And my mom and my sister arrived a couple of days early to kind of get adjusted, to be able to see what our routine was with Oliver before we left, right? Just so we had a little bit of a warmer handoff. And I think that was like just a couple days before we left, like maybe like March 30th of last year. Amber, I think mom flew directly to meet you in Orlando, right? And At this point, you were kind of familiar that she was having some issues at airports and things. So do you remember any of the things that you had kind of either prepared to or planned for that trip for her to meet you there, and like what ended up happening at the airport?
Yeah, you brought up a good story. So I lived in Orlando at the time, and she was going to have like basically a layover in Orlando to meet me, and then we were going to get on the plane to Plattsburgh from there. And what happened was I said, okay, I'm going to basically wait for you at I don't remember exactly. It's been a long year, so I can't remember exactly the details. But like I was like, meet me at this specific spot. Like, you can't miss it. You literally just follow the people and then I'll be right there. And then like I'm calling her and she's like I don't know where I am. Like I'm lost. And I look at her because we have like Find My Friends. So I'm like, okay, just stay where you are. Just stand there, stop moving. I'm going to try to find you. And she's on the other side of the airport somehow. I have no idea how. Like, I know she landed like at this gate, but I think I don't know what happened.
She wandered.
And so I basically said, just stay there. Like, it is easier for me to wander through this airport and follow Find My Friends and find you than it is to try to give you directions at this point. Just stay there. So I eventually find her. and she has clear, like the not TSA clear, the clear, I think it's just called clear.
Yeah, clear.
She has clear, and we both had TSA pre-check, so we went through pre-check together. But she had to clear on her own, and I was like, oh no. Like I already had so much anxiety. Like airports in general give people anxiety. And then being like, is she going to be able to pull up the app on her phone? Like she was having a lot of issues. Like, where do I go for the clear? Like, how do I show them the boarding pass? And like I was like, I wish I can go through this thing with her. And she just said she insisted like just going through that. And I was like, well, I'm just going to go on the other side. And I'm just going to wait for her. She's going to be through in just a minute. And it was like 10 minutes. And I was like, where is she? All you got to do was show him the thing. And so I call her and she was like, "Oh, this guy took me because I can't find my boarding pass." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And so then I went back through security to go to try to find her. And like I was like, "It's right here." And I pulled up the app again and show her where it was. And I was like, "Oh man, this is gonna be a long day." So I think she got it. Like I showed the guy that she was with, like, oh, here's her stuff, and then she was able to go through clear. We got on the train and then we got to Plattsburgh. So yeah, that
That
was a rough
was the
start.
first sign that it was not, despite like your being very clear about like, hey, like, let's meet here. Here's our plan. Like, even then, like, you couldn't kind of brace for the little things that you just can't, when there's a deficiency there, like it really starts to shine through. One thing that we had kind of noticed, I feel like, and again, it's hard to remember now, like a year later, exactly the details, but I remember feeling like we knew that mom had a very hard time with transition. So like coming to New York or leaving New York, like she would get very emotional. We were aware at this time that she had, if you remember, if you listened last week, we talked about how at this point she was diagnosed with pseudo dementia. And so we were really trying to do our best to kind of support her emotions in this time. So again, we're trying to be calm, we're trying to be supportive. I remember I picked Amber and my mom up from the airport, and like it was pretty late in the evening. So I think we just had dinner and we had a couple laughs and we went to bed, and all was well. And then the next day was a day that we was kind of free form. It was just going to be like us hanging out, spending some time together, and showing you kind of stuff around the house. So, and again, I will take full accountability for the fact, like, again, in hindsight, I'm like, I wish I would have done a little bit more, slow down, show how things work. Like, remember these, both my mom and my sister are with a almost 1 year old all the time. So like, you know, just trying to, I wish I would have slowed down a little bit more. But first thing that morning, I was like, oh, okay, well, we're going to feed Oliver. Like he sits in his high chair. So I had actually, I think, shown the night before exactly like how his high chair works, like showed like the side pieces. And I was like, this is how it works. You can sit here. And so I remember like my mom was holding Oliver that morning and she's like, okay, like this is going to be like a trial run. Like, and I was like, okay, like, can you do it? Great. And somehow she had set Oliver down. He was, I think, just over 9 months old at the time, set him in his high chair, and then like completely left him, like was fiddling with the tray that gets hooked in. Like he was not even sitting up very well at that time. Like he's in a high chair. And I remember like watching this happen, and I kind of like went into mom mode and kind of freaked out. And I was like, Mom, like you have to like hold on to him. Like he's a baby. Like he needs, this is how like the high chair works. And this interaction, and forgive me, I feel like I just kind of explained it poorly, but this interaction around the high chair ended up setting off a very, very emotional reaction the entire rest of the day. I think it's multi-layered. Like, I think once we kind of processed through it, it seemed like there was some shame that had come up around like being deemed kind of untrustworthy in that moment. I also wondered if there was kind of a little bit of self-doubt, right? Like, here I am, I'm supposed to be helping with the baby, and like, I can't do this. Like, I don't know how to do this. And of course, she didn't have those words. She couldn't really say that to us. And I think she was probably afraid of a lot of those feelings. So she ended up just locking herself in the bedroom. And I think she went as far as saying, like, I don't want to be here. Like,
Yeah, I
just
want to
send
go
me back
home.
home.
And she
I
didn't know
want to
how to
go
do it.
home.
I remember her being like, I need you to help me find a flight home. Like she didn't even know how to look up flight homes or anything, even if she wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really tough because I do remember very clearly that, like, so you and I decided to go off. We were going to take a trip over to Vermont because it's a pretty short drive from here. And we took Oliver with us. We just left mom at home that day just to kind of rest and be in her emotions and hope we could figure out whatever she needed once later that day. And you and I had many, many talks in the car around, like, what is happening? Like, what is this reaction about? Like, do I need to not go to Hawaii? Like, is this like a big enough thing? Like that I can't leave you here by yourself with Oliver, with everything you have going on. Like, how are we going to do this? Like, it was very, very stressful right before leaving to go so far away from New York with your child here. And so that was the beginning of the trip. And I mean, after that, when we got home that night, like, we were able to talk to mom and kind of regroup. And I don't think we ever really got to the bottom with her around how she was feeling or like her ability to process that. You know, she kind of was able to at least, I think we ended up having to enlist dad's help to talk to her and kind of get her to calm down
Yeah.
and be willing to,
Yeah, we had to call dad when we were on our way to Vermont and explain it and
and
say
kind of
like,
get his perspective.
yeah,
Yeah. So that was kind of the bumpy entrance to this trip. And then um we Dave and I did leave. We left the next day in the evening for our trip to Hawaii. We were gone for, I think, 5 days. Probably felt like 5 weeks for you, Amber. And
yeah.
um let's go ahead and see if you can remember, like, I know you have you ended up having so many experiences that you started to keep a running list of things that had happened, which is kind of nice to be able to look back on. So you can definitely reference that. But before we start getting into the exact list, like, do you remember, like, how you felt at the beginning of that trip and us leaving? Like, what were some of your biggest fears and worries, or maybe even like, what did you imagine you could count on mom for going into that trip that maybe you eventually started to realize that those things weren't possible?
I knew it was going to be a challenge. Like I already like we just talked about before this, like it's not like we knew she was at 100% cognitively, but we didn't
Mm-hmm.
realize the extent of it until we were there and it was too late to, you can't cancel
Change
your
course.
flight. Yeah, we have to deal with it. And I think it was really hard. Like I wish in hindsight that I would have just taken off the week, but I didn't realize like again how bad it was and we'll go into like the stories and scenarios that kind of happened, but I felt like I knew it was going to be a really hard week, and I knew that I was going to be taking care of Oliver by myself, basically. I was
Yeah.
really hoping that she could, and it's not like I didn't trust her, like she was going to be dangerous with him, or like I didn't feel like that or anything, like, but I was like, I just felt like I couldn't relax at all. Like I was so tense. Like if I was in meetings, I was constantly had the baby monitor next to me, like even though she was with him, to be like, she's going to need something, she's not going to be able to find something. Like it was like taking care of two kids,
Yeah.
if I'm honest. And so it just felt very stressful, but I also didn't want to present that to you because you don't want that going into your trip being like, "Oh gosh, things are rough." Like I don't think I told you how bad it was until like halfway through your trip when I was like, "This is
I
rough."
think you were broken at that
Yeah, I
point
was I
when
was
it all
broken for
came
sure.
out. Yeah. So do you want to just look at your list and kind of start at the top and go scenario by scenario? Because I don't think we kept track of days. It wasn't like day
No.
one this happened, day two this happened. It was more just like the first thing that you noticed. So what was
Yeah.
that first situation that got you thinking, like, something is different? So these are closer. Because
Well,
I know up to this point, like, you weren't really on the dementia train with me. Like, I felt like I was more of the one of the two of us that was like, these seem like dementia related symptoms. What was the first one that you were like, that started to change your mind towards maybe this as more dementia?
I think it was a combination, and it wasn't like a day one this happened, day two this happened. It was more like by day three, I saw a pattern of behavior that I was like, this doesn't make sense. So like, for example, with a 9-month old, you have baby gates all around your house, at stairs and stuff. And baby gates are tricky, but like, you learn how to use them once and you know how to use them. And maybe twice, like, oh yeah, it's like this lever or something.
Yeah.
But it's very standard baby gate. And like I think it was like day three. Like I think I was like working in the living room because I was like, keeping an eye on her and Oliver and stuff, and I wasn't on meetings or anything. So I was like working in the living room. And so like I saw mom like in my peripheral, like dealing with the gate or something, but I wasn't like watching her. But after a couple minutes, I like clicked that she was still like dealing with this baby gate. So I turned around and she was on the other side of the baby gate, just like pushing, like kind of like trying to get it to open. And I was just like, are you trying to get past there? She's like, yeah, I can't figure out how to open this. And I was like, Mom, it's on the other side. And you just put your thumb here and pull and then lift up. And she was like, oh, like every time I do something like that, I'm so silly. Like I had such a hard time sleeping last night. I haven't had my coffee this morning. There was always some excuse.
Yeah.
But I thought that was like the first time that I was like, this is not normal. Like you don't, even if you forgot how to use it, your eyes should be able to make that connection. Like, oh, here's the lock, undo it. Like, so there was
Yeah, you start to
a
see the
disconnect.
difference between like I remember this example because you had told me that she was like literally trying to open the wrong side of the gate. And you're exactly right. Like we take for granted like how quickly our brains perform tasks that we can look down at something and like maybe you go to open that side, but as soon as you look down, you're like, oh, I'm on the wrong side. And then you pivot and you figure it out and you open it. But like this example is really perfect because for 3 minutes or longer, she would have just sat there kind of stuck with this puzzle and really not had the cognitive ability to kind of sort through what she was seeing and how to get past it.
Exactly. Yeah, she was just very defensive when I asked her about it, which was also becoming a pattern every time like I mentioned something. And then there was also, I don't know, again, maybe like that 3 or 4 day mark. We were just in the kitchen making dinner, and I think it was one of those things where like we kind of ate our own things. Like we went to the grocery store before you left and like stocked up on frozen meals and stuff. And so I had like, I don't know, like a mac and cheese, frozen mac and cheese or something. And she asked me like a little while later, like, what did you end up having for dinner? And I was like, oh, I had frozen mac and cheese. And then it was like 10 minutes later, and she was like, so what'd you have for dinner tonight? And I was like, you just asked me this. It was frozen mac and cheese. Oh, yeah, you're right. Like people do all the time. Like, oh, you just told me that. Like, sorry. And then it was again another 2 times. Within 30 minutes, she asked me 4 times what I had for dinner. And I was like, this is a short-term memory problem. This is a problem.
Yeah.
Every time I told her, I was like, Mom, you just asked me that. She was like, what? I did? Like she had no recollection of it.
Yeah.
Like the first time she said like, oh, you're right. I just asked you. But like the other 2 times, like she had no idea.
You could tell that she genuinely was like starting over, that it wasn't just like one of those things where, because we all have that where we're like ask a
Hmm.
question, but we're not really paying attention to the answer. And
Yeah,
then we ask again, like you could tell that like that's not what was happening. Right.
exactly. So, there's also a time, so she wears an Apple Watch and she forgot, or so she thought she forgot her watch charger. And I even helped look for it, the first night and couldn't find it. So I was like, oh, it's not a big deal. When you get up in the morning, once I take my watch off the charger, we'll put yours on there. And like she put that was like multiple, I mean, every day she'd charge her watch on there. And there was probably like 3 times throughout the whole week that she was like, I can't find my watch charger. And I was like, Mom, you've been bringing it to me every single morning, and I've been putting it on mine. And like, again, the first time she kind of mathed
Yeah.
it, was like, yeah, oh yeah, I remember. And then like the second, the third time, she was like, I did?
I remember this because it wasn't just a matter of forgetting it. It was that you were finding her spending long periods of time
Yeah, she's
stuck
wandering
on
the
this loop.
hallway.
Yeah.
Yeah, just being like, I can't find my watch charger. I've looked everywhere. Like just yeah, obsessing about it. And I'm
Which
like,
didn't make sense too, because you're like, why would you find it in the hallway? Like
yeah,
this doesn't even compute. What is happening?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So another scenario was she she was spending like a long time. Again, like I was letting her do her thing. I wasn't like micromanaging her. So I noticed she was over by the laundry machine for a couple minutes. And eventually she asked me, like, how do you start this? Which I thought was really weird. And I know we talked about this last episode where she was having that issue
Hmm.
with the washing machine. And just a
Same
few
issue.
days prior. Yeah, and just just a few days prior, you showed her like, here's the start button, here, like how you do it again. And it was just a few days later that she is asking me again, how do I start it? And I was like, hey, it's the play button. The play button? And I was like, yeah, like the sideways triangle, like on a VCR player, there's the play and the pause. And she had no idea what I was talking about when I said the play button.
Yeah, I
And so I
remember. I
kind of showed
remember
her
this
again.
one because I just before we started recording today, I went back through my texts, the text we shared back and forth when I was in Hawaii, and you recounted this one, and you actually had said that just a few days, maybe it was even just one day prior, you said Monday she did laundry by herself, had no
Yeah.
problems with it, got it all done. And then the next day she literally asked that question, was
Yeah, I had
completely
no
stuck
idea.
with it. And then you were also like, and why are you doing laundry again? You just did laundry
Yeah.
yesterday. Like that was another thing that was kind
We
of a
haven't left the
little bit
house.
of a
It's not like
weird.
we like we're
Yeah,
playing in the backyard in the dirt or it's anything like
exactly.
that. I
Yeah, you can
think,
see how like it's not just one of these things. Like if it was only
yeah.
the baby gate that entire period or only the
Hmm.
washing machine over a week, like that is easy to just like chalk up as a one-off, but it's kind of the culmination of a lot of these experiences. And I feel like at this point in the trip, like you really started to piece together like, okay, something is not going right
That's
with
when I
mom.
started
Like she is
recording it on the
having,
notes. I was like, we
yeah,
need to start recording all these things. And that's when I
yeah.
started to put it into Chat GPT
And and I
and
think there was pieces like when you brought up the whole thing about the play button on the washing machine, like that's a really common thing that we use
mhm.
all the time, right? You're like, hey, like go up to my room, I'm looking for a green sweater, right? Like you try to give people, like you're driving down the street, hey, look, turn left, the gas station. Like you give a visual cue of what something it looks like. I think what we learned around that process is like, and I we did obviously didn't know it then, but we started to realize like you can't give cues over what visuals look like. Like she does not see the play button
Yeah.
anymore. So like telling her that, like you can tell somebody who doesn't have Alzheimer's that, and they'll look for a sideways triangle and they'll
But they can't make
understand
that connection anymore.
exactly. So like even telling her like look for the sideways triangle, like it wasn't working. That didn't help her overcome that. Like you had to go and physically show her, and then she would be like, all right. And like you said, there was a lot of masking.
Yeah.
Nothing's wrong. I'm just tired. It's all good, because she probably didn't want to be feeling any of those things either.
Yeah.
So what was the next thing that had
Well,
happened?
it kind of goes along with the laundry because and I don't remember if this was right before then or maybe a few days prior, but she couldn't figure out how to open the, you like the Tides pods laundry thing where it's like the child lock on the top and you squeeze and then
Mhm.
twist to pull off. She was just trying to rip it off. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I'm trying to get the laundry detergent out of here." Like she couldn't even like she didn't even realize like,
Yeah.
"Oh, there's a child lock. I need to squeeze this." Like any
And I
child lock, anything
remember
with her arms is just
when we talked to her about that, she said something like,
like
well,
I don't
mine
use
is
that at
different at home.
home.
Mine is,
Yeah.
yeah,
I have the
exactly.
poor, so I just didn't know. And again, it's like that thing of like she has no vision issues, but it's the cognitive disconnect
Change.
of yeah, you can't look at this and say how does this work. It's like that processing, the executive functioning of like how does this work. Oh, in the like recall my brain cells to show like this is a child lock, like that's just gone.
Yeah.
Like those neurons are now gone. We didn't know that at the time, but I thought that was very strange because
Yeah.
even if you didn't know how to open it,
You
you
wouldn't
should
just be
have the
ripping.
connection of the child lock. Yeah, you wouldn't just be ripping it. um,
Yeah. And there was another example of something with a lid that happened as
yeah.
well.
Exactly. Like we went out to lunch to a Mexican like fast casual type place and it was one of those to go containers where it's like a metal bottom and then the plastic top and then you kind of cinch the metal around the plastic top. And she
Mhm.
just kept like she couldn't understand it so like she put the plastic on and then just kept like crushing the whole thing like and I was like whoa 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 like what is happening here like give me your thing. Like and then I did it for her, but like it was like dented in. Like she couldn't figure out like how to put the lid on. And I just again thought like this is so
How
strange.
I think it was probably kind of tricky because you mentioned something earlier about her acting kind of defensively. Like,
Hmm.
what was the mixture between like shirking it off or like kind of masking it, like, oh, haha, like I'm just silly, I'm just tired, I'm whatever, and versus her starting to feel like kind of suspicious or defensive? Like, what was that mix?
I think it's when I accused her of like, like something's going like something is wrong like in your brain, like you either have dementia or you have this, like then she get very defensive because she
Why?
felt like
What
she
made
had an
you want
excuse
to
for
say that
everything.
to her?
I don't think I did until later in the trip once I had this list because I mentioned something like I think something is wrong and she's like why would you say that, and I read this list to her and she got very defensive because she
Got it.
felt like in her mind she had an excuse for everything. She's like, it was a very stressful beginning of the trip. I'm 2 hours behind. I usually sleep till like 9 mountain time. I have not had my coffee, very much. Like any excuse she can come up with. So she felt like you guys are accusing me of something and saying something's wrong with me when there's not. I just have these excuses.
Yeah.
And you just don't trust me. And I felt like she felt like sad, but it wasn't about
Yeah.
that.
It wasn't personal. And I do remember that there was a moment in our text where once you kind of had a breaking moment and like it didn't help that the other part of the story, which he's not the key player in this, but Oliver was not sleeping well during this
Oh,
trip.
yeah. He was
It was
teething.
he was teething, he was up in the
God.
middle of the night. It was really, really hard. And of course, like you not being the mom, like you didn't have as much trust in being like, okay, I'll bring him to my bed or I'll do whatever. It was like
Yeah.
it was kind of tough on you, and you were really struggling with that as well.
I
Like
mean,
on
yeah, I was
top, it was a double
still
whammy.
working 8 hours a day and
Exactly.
then dealing with
So, but
mom and trying to have the stress of that.
I remember you kind of telling me like some of these examples that were going on, and I remember feeling some guilt that I was like, gosh, this is really serious. Like I was feeling like we should have been trying to get her more help before this. Like I had this moment where I was like,
You
I
didn't
should have
realize how bad
been
she was too. Like you were like,
no, like
I would have never told her to
no.
come if I would have known she was at this point.
Like, and it was very, very scary. Like just to realize like your mom is in this position that like you kind of set her up for this very stressful thing. I set you up for this stressful thing. And like, I remember like one of your responses to this was like, you've always been a very action oriented person. You were like, well, I'm going to log into United and I'm going to figure out like who her neurologists are. Like, we are going to get her a neurology
Yeah.
appointment. And that's when like you and I both started being like, that's it. We are getting more involved in her actual medical care. Because at this point, we had kind of been
We told
watching with
dad, but
care. We had told
yeah.
him, we had said you should get an evaluation. We were asking what they were saying. But at this point, we hadn't been like, I'm logging in, you're getting a neurology appointment. I'm going to see. Because at this point, I think we had known that she had at one point got a referral for a neurologist, but it was like a 3-year wait. And then we thought she was on that list for the 3-year wait. And then we came to find out that she didn't even sign up. She was just
You
like, oh,
said
that's
three
too far
years.
out.
That's too long. And we were like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Because the
Yeah.
3 year mark would have been that year.
Yeah. So do you remember asking her for her login and like how did that go over?
Yeah, I think it was I don't remember the exact details, but I think I told her like I think I after she was defensive about like there's something wrong, I think she came around and said like, well, like maybe I have ADHD or something. Like I wouldn't be opposed to getting an evaluation because I do feel like something is off. But like basically like you guys are just really dramatic and I don't agree with any things you've said, but like I'll get tested, sure. And so she didn't know her password, but she didn't have her computer, so we were just using mine. And so we reset her password, and I just had her phone, and we got into like her Gmail to reset the password and stuff. And it was like as I think I printed off. I was gonna print off the neurologist or something. As I was doing that, it's like she completely forgot again, and she was like, "Wait, why are you in here?" And I was like, like we're gonna find you a neurologist. Why? Why would you find me a neurologist? And like got really defensive again, and I was like concerned because I was like, we just had this conversation, like I'm not tricking you, like I've told you this whole thing along the way, and I've noticed that a lot when she gets stressed in those environments and she has that really fast short-term memory, she feels she goes to, you're tricking me. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
in the research I've done, that's actually very common with Alzheimer's.
Yeah. Yeah, you started to see it right then and there because like you said, 1 minute it would be like, okay, I'm with you. And then the next minute it's like all of that just went completely out the window. And this is stuff is happening without my control and I'm not okay with it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you have any other things that really stood out to you that were like those symptoms from that time?
Yeah, I have a couple more. There's multiple times as a 9 month old where you just need a pacifier, like going to bed or crying or whatever. And, like he throws them on the floor. Hey, like, hey, mom, can you hand me another pacifier? And I remember being at the top of the stairs with Oliver and yelling down to mom and saying that. And she was on the couch downstairs and I saw her get up and you can just tell like she had no idea where the pacifiers were. Even though they're in the exact same place, cleaned on the kitchen counter the entire week, she would stand up and she would just like look around and I was like, they're on the counter, they're on the counter. And like she'd go over the counter and she would just look. And I was so frustrated because I had to go down there now with Oliver and I'm pretty weak and he's like 20 pounds. Then he's tired and crying and I'd worked all day and I'm trying to deal with my mom. And I was like, it's fine. Like I'll get it myself, sit back down. And then she probably feels bad because she can't do it. And I'm adding to that stress. And I'm getting it
Yeah.
myself. Again, I was like, not knowing what was happening, I was like, these pacifiers have been here all week. Like, why can't you remember where they are?
Yeah, it reminds me of kind of how I felt when Oliver was first born, where it's like you take for granted just the little things you think that another grown adult can help support you with your child, where it's just like, I remember one time Dave had to go out of town. And so you came to stay with me just to be my extra set of hands. And you were that, right? If I said I need a pacifier, like you knew where that was. If I was downstairs, it was like, okay, hey, I'll get his cup of milk ready. Like we'll like you can kind of tag team it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this moment, like this trip kind of underscored like mom at that point especially was not capable of being that extra set of
Yeah.
hands. Like she could not
I can't
anticipate
ask
what
her
you
for
need.
anything, I
And then even
realized.
if you exactly, even if you ask for it, she can't even fully come through with that request at that point because these things are things that require executive functioning and cognitive
And
support
memory.
and memory. Exactly. And those three things are areas that you can't reliably get
Yeah.
help on in this case. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what was
Exactly.
another example?
I just have two more here. This is like one of like the first days she was just playing with Oliver while I was at work, and I was right next to them. And it was, one of those simple like baby games where it's like press the button and it kind of opens. Like press the red and then a Jack in the Box type thing comes up. And she couldn't figure it out. She was like trying to open the thing. Like, how does this game work? And I was just thinking, like, you're in your like she was what 60 at the time. She just turned 60 and you can't figure out a 9 month old game? Like, again, like this is very, very simple. So I just thought that was kind of strange. And then like when we were going to lunch, it was April in New York, so it was chilly, you need a jacket. And she couldn't figure out how to put her jacket on. Like she like put it in the
Yeah.
wrong way and like again, just that executive functioning like of not being able to even put your jacket on correctly. And I'd like hold it on, I'd like take it off and put it on. Like it was like helping like a
Like,
toddler put on their
what are
jacket.
you doing?
Yeah, I was just like, oh man.
There was one more thing I remember from the trip. I don't know if you remember this, but there was like a night where Oliver had like peed through his diaper and like it was like a
Yes.
whole thing. What happened with that?
Yeah. So, as we talked about, Oliver wasn't sleeping very well. So it was like, 2 in the morning or something. And I hear him crying. So I get in there and he peed through his diaper. And I needed to wake mom up because she needed to hold him while I changed the bed and changed him and everything. And so, like, she didn't need to do anything but hold him. And so I woke her up and she was obviously cognizant. Hi, Oliver, and sitting with him and everything. And then I changed his bed, changed him. He went back to sleep. And the next morning, me and mom were talking about it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, like last night was crazy." And she even like to add, like she even called Dave. I remember we called you guys because we couldn't find an extra pair of sheets. And so I
Oh
said,
yeah,
"Can you call Dave and see where the extra pair of sheets are, so I can change his stuff?" So she was even like not only just
participate.
like yeah, she was participating exactly. So like she was there. And so like the next morning we were talking about it and she was like, "Oh, like he woke up. Like I must have slept through that whole thing." Like she had no recollection of any of that happening.
Like not even just being like, oh yeah, that's kind of fuzzy. It was like full on. Like
Gone.
she thought you were just talking about something that happened while she was literally slept
Yeah.
through it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. That was
So do
concerning.
you? I know. I remember when I came home, like it felt pretty heavy. Like we had planned it so that we would have a little bit more time together. Like I think we got home on like a Friday or something, and then I think you guys were flying out Sunday
Sunday.
night. And so we had some more time together. And I remember, actually, I feel like I know there was a day where you were working. So we must have got home on Thursday because
Thursday night, maybe.
Friday, and I went for a drive with mom, and she was a little bit cranky with us. I remember this because like I think she was kind of in that defensive mode, and this is like the first time that like I think like she and I were just driving through the mountains, and I was like, mom, I said, I've been a little worried about you for a while. And I just tried to tell her a couple of the examples, and I just said, I just want you to remember, like, nobody's out to get you. Like, it's none of this is your fault. Like, I really tried to make that abundantly clear to her. That's like, none of us think that you're not remembering how to open a baby gate on purpose because you're like stupid, for lack of a better word, right? Like it's not like we think that less of you because these things are happening. Like, we're concerned for you because this is a sign that something is not working correctly in your brain, and we want you to be here with us for as long as possible, is your best yourself as you're capable to be. And if we're not honest with you about what's really going on, like, we can't do that. We can't help you. Like, I really tried to make it about like, this is not your fault. And I remember she was like pretty mad. Like, she was like, I don't
Yeah.
understand why you're saying this. There's nothing wrong with me. Like, wait and see. Like, it's just old age. And she was like, I mean, it was a pretty big standoff. Like, it didn't end poorly. Like, we were able to get past it and enjoy the rest of the ride. But like, it was definitely like something that we couldn't
Disagreement.
agree on. Yeah. And I remember after that, after work day, you and I at some point went on, I think maybe like a Target run to pick up some things. Of course, always at Target. And I feel like that's when we decided, we are like, what are we going to do? And we were like, we're going to have to call dad. Like, this has gone too
I
far.
think, well,
We have to do that.
actually,
What
I think it
happened?
was the Target run that me and you really talked about it. And that's when I took the list and you said, why don't you upload it to ChatGPT and see what,
Mm-hmm.
like, if these are common dementia symptoms. And that's when it said, of course, in pure ChatGPT terms, like, I'm not a doctor, like, you need to see a neurologist. But yes, these are all very classic with Alzheimer's disease, and you need to get her checked out by somebody.
Yeah.
And that kind of confirmed that. And later that night, once mom was in bed, I think we ran to the gas station. And that's
Oh,
when I
yeah.
remember us parking, and then we called dad.
Yes, exactly. We called dad, and that was another tough one, right? Because dad had this idea at that point that like he was already in charge of it. He got her with a primary care physician. They had diagnosed her with, they're working on her depression medications. Like, he felt like this was completely
Taken care of.
psychological. This was emotional. This was, she needed therapy. She had had too much trauma. I think there was even like a talk about like, well, maybe she just needs like a mushrooms trip to
To
reset
reset her brain.
her. Yeah, we were like,
Oh
absolutely
no.
not. Like, we are pretty sure that she's has some kind of dementia. Like, please don't do that, which they never did, just for the record. But
As far as we're
you
aware.
know, I think it was one of these. Yeah, exactly. As far as like it was something that was really challenging for us to like really confront dad and say like, dad, we have a list of things that Amber has seen up close and personal and experienced. We're going to walk you through this list, and all we want you to do is just listen to these things and really ask yourself if these are anxiety related symptoms or if it sounds like there's something else going on here. I can't remember his reaction to that
I think
list. Do
he
you?
did say like, wow, that is concerning. Like basically though, like I don't see that here though. So I think
Yeah.
she's just basically the same thing. Like I think she's just tired, she's been very emotional, like kind of not putting his foot down. He didn't say like you guys are wrong or anything, but I think he's just like I think
Yeah.
you guys are just being a little bit dramatic, but I think it was enough for him to
Yeah.
make that to say like we'll tell the primary care physician and see if he can get like a see what he thinks or something.
Exactly. I think that was the only thing we kind of asked for was like, hey, okay, but take this list and tell like one of her doctors, you need to come with this list and say, these are the things that
We're
our
seeing.
kids experienced with her. And it was, I believe the outcome of that list that got her, what is it called, a referral to a neuropsychologist that she ended up going to like have a full cognitive evaluation by. And that was probably one of the most important things that could happen in her total diagnosis, was actually getting that because I think that if we wouldn't have pushed for that, she could have spent years more in this place of
slipping
it's
by.
just anxiety. She just doesn't travel well. Like, stress
She's
is
getting
hard,
old,
change is
quote
hard.
unquote.
Exactly.
Like a lot of people do. They brush it off.
Yeah, exactly. I know there's a lot more, there's probably one more part that we need to cover, which is like that part of like what happened with that evaluation. There's the part around, you took a trip out to May and there was more that happened then. And then there's the lead up to, and there was the trip that I took out in June as well. And then finally that led up to the neurologist appointments. So I guess one of the reasons that we wanted to share this story is because I hope that it's kind of comforting for any of you out there who have either been through an experience like this or who may be living this experience right now, to kind of know this is a very common part before a diagnosis, where you're trying to piece these puzzle pieces together and there's not one conclusive piece that can steer you or be a guiding light. Like, you kind of have to take the patterns that are happening, trust your gut, try to work with your medical team, and a mixture of that. I mean, that's what ended up working for us, which we will go over more next time, because as this trip concluded at the beginning of April, we ended up with her full diagnosis at the end of June. So there's probably part 3 to come, which is what happened the rest of April, May, and into June. There were a couple of different experiences that Amber and I had traveling out to spend time with her in her home, things that we observed in her home location. And then, of course, there's like the experience with different doctors that she had to actually get to that diagnosis. So I think for today, we hope this has been helpful for you. So thank you for joining us today.
And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. If this episode resonated with you, or if someone you love is navigating an Alzheimer's diagnosis, please know you don't have to fight it alone. The Alzheimer's Association is a free 24/7 resource available to anyone who needs support. Whether you're newly diagnosed, deep in caregiving, or just trying to understand what comes next. You can reach them anytime at 1-800-272-3900. You can also reach them online at alz.org.